comes to professional wrestling, if you are talking about it, we are talking about it. Welcome to the Wrestle Chat Podcast with the Ant-Man.
You know, whereas kids, we may have parked in front of the TV on a Saturday morning to watch some cartoons. Now as adults, we hang out and we talk wrestling. Yes, I'm using the term adults loosely. Welcome to the Wrestle Chat Podcast with me. I'm the Ant-Man. If you're watching on the Wrestle Chat TV on YouTube, or maybe you're listening on the free iHeartRadio app, thank you so much for being here. Michael Glavin, welcome back. Good to see you. You were let out of the garage after last week's show. The wife let you back in, I see, just into a different place.
That's correct. Not only am I back inside, but my wife sent me to the great state of Georgia.
Oh, she did.
So I'm coming to you live from a closet, working on location for my day job. I don't know if you guys know this, but when I negotiated my contract with Wrestle Chat, I didn't get everything that I wanted, so I got to hold a day job, and that day job has me on location in the great state of Georgia. So I'm coming to you from a closet where I was not going to miss talking about wrestling. So this week I'm out of the garage, but you got me on a FaceTime camera and a set of AirPods because we're gonna talk wrestling no matter what.
Fine by me. And as you stepped off the plane in Georgia, we got a
Hello, ladies.
Didn't we?
That's exactly right.
That's what I thought.
Exactly right. They were lined up.
AEW Dynamite. Speaking of people lining up, it was on Wednesday. First, we saw a huge jump in viewership after being displaced last week in lieu of the MLB playoffs. Over 900,000 took in this week's show. A good sign for AEW. Good to see that for them. And I'm sure in part it was because they promoted that Sting would address the fans, and boy did he ever. Sting's last match will come at AEW Revolution. While there's not been a city or a date or even opponent revealed yet, the show typically goes down in March, and that means just before WrestleMania 40. We're going to see Sting bid his 40-plus year career in pro wrestling adieu. Now, the fun part. Let the speculation begin. Michael, I'll start with you. Who would you like to see as the Stinger's final opponent?
That's real tough. I mean, in the world of pro wrestling, we there's the thought about putting over a young guy. There's the thought about some iconic match. I would rather see him go out off of an established person instead of putting over the young guy. I don't mind, putting over young guys. It needs to happen. But with Sting in particular, I think he just needs to have a good match with an established guy. It's not about getting somebody over. It's not about win or losing. It's just enjoying the match. And so putting on a good match with somebody, to be honest with you, I can't name a single person that I could even imagine who it would be. There's so many great people on the roster that could finish him, could finish up with him. But you're right. Let the speculation begin, because we've got a whole roster of people to cycle through on trying to figure out who that's going to be.
Well, I like the way this is going, because we had last week and we had this week. We disagree on this. So here's what I thought about. What a retiring performer would hope to pass along as they move on to their next chapter, whatever Sting's will be. One would be a legacy. No denying that Sting already has one of those. He already has a great and very storied legacy. So with that being solidified, next I would say would be a story. So we get between now and March. Who could Sting tell a great story with? And third, the launch pad, or the springboard, or as it's often referred to in wrestling, the passing of the torch. Who can he give the rub to on his way out? Who would benefit the most from being in Sting's final match? Who would benefit the most being Sting's final opponent? And it's not someone you get only one of these parameters fulfilled with. It's someone who can give you all three. They can cap the legacy, they can tell the story, and they're ready to launch to the next level. But listen, this was something great that Conrad and Ric Flair put together for Ric Flair's last match. One, they protected Ric with doing a tag team match as much as they could. They really saw an opportunity to write Jay Lethal and Andrade El Idolo's names in the history book with this match. And if it were to be someone that is already in AEW. You don't bring someone new in and then start something here with Sting. It's someone who's there. I'd have to say that you do this last match with MJF or Ricky Starks. But no matter who ends up as the opponent for Sting, I would say that if you're Tony Khan, you just make sure the deal is done for the foreseeable future anyway, so you get as much of the upside as you possibly can. Make sure it's not someone who could jump ship and take the momentum that they're hopefully getting from being in Sting's last match with them to go somewhere else. So we'll see how this plays out. I mean, we've got until predictably March before everything's said and done, but I expect them to start something, hopefully before the end of the year, if not just after the first of the year. If this is your first time with us here on the Wrestle Chat podcast, I want to say thank you so much for being here. We want to invite you to join the chat. Let us know your opinion on the topics that we discuss here, especially if you have a different take than what we're talking about. Let us know. Okay, so several days this past week, WWE ran pre-sales for the Royal Rumble coming up in January at Tropicana Field in Tampa, Florida. As of 9 a.m. Central yesterday, the general on sale opened up, and I expect there to be another record-setting attendance for this occasion. However, I do have a little concern, Michael, and that is over the downside to these record-breaking numbers that WWE has. And that comes at the expense of WWE events being family occasions. I jumped in on one of the days for the pre-sale, and the least expensive ticket was $350 a ticket. For a family of four, that right there is $1,400 before fees. Way before hot dogs and drinks, long before any kind of travel is factored in. And while it's true that this actually may still be less than one ticket to see Taylor Swift, the number of families able to attend has now dwindled quickly. So I'm the executive producer for a national radio show called After Midnight with Granger Smith. And like most radio shows, we have topics that, for callers to call in and chime in on with their thoughts of whatever question is proposed. The topic this past week has been, what's one thing that you used to spend money on that you now consider no longer worth it? Many of the callers were chiming in with thoughts like, going out to eat, or their daily Starbucks, but many of them said concerts. And I feel that, $1,400 in tickets for WWE's Royal Rumble, by the way, that's the least expensive ticket, it would be running parallel with kind of that concert vein of some of those callers. Now, in all fairness, I did jump back on in the general on sale for the Royal Rumble and saw that the least expensive ticket then, after they opened up more seats for sale, was $175. But that's still $700 for the average family of four. Again, before fees and travel and food. And I feel attrition is coming sooner than later. If it's not already happening, we're just not seeing the effects of it yet. One of the reasons wrestling is so near and dear to me is because it was something that me and my dad did together that didn't have anything to do with his profession. WWE's live show like Raw and SmackDown used to tout family fun with tickets starting at only $25. Now, those were nosebleeds, mind you, but that would still allow you to attend as a family without taking out a second mortgage. What are you feeling on the WWE ticket prices here, Michael?
It's something that we're seeing across the whole world. That's a problem overall, is that, we're dealing with a lot of inflation and different things. But getting back to the core of it, it is a little disheartening to think that, I got three boys. And so just to take my boys would be the family of four situation. And, I got a decent job. I make a salary that is probably above the average American by statistics. And even myself looking at it going, well, man, if I got to pay $350 to get a ticket, I'm going to pay probably $200 for a flight. I'm going to pay, $150 to $200 for, a bottom rung hotel room. Then there's the Uber, and then there's the food, and even if you do a quick day, turn and burn, it adds up pretty quickly. And so, is it necessarily WWE's fault? Maybe not. But it is interesting to see that we're hearing about so many record sales with, or so many records and things being set with such high prices. And so, I'm the type of person and the type of fan that, I could budget to go to every premium live event if I wanted to, but not at this price point.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not a guy that needs to sit front row. You put me in the first mezzanine and I'm a happy camper. And so the bar's pretty low for what it takes to enjoy an event, to be there in person. But if the lowest bar to get to the event is outside of your means, then it doesn't really matter. And so again, there's nothing we can do about it, but hopefully in all of this, everything will turn around and the events become more accessible again.
I'll tell you this. I went to WrestleMania 38, me and my oldest daughter, and for both days, so you got to go to 2 nights for 2 people, was $500. That was, I could stomach that a little bit better than one show for, the cheapest, and these are nosebleeds at Tropicana Field, $175.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Have ticket prices in wrestling changed your attendance one way or the other? Hit us up in the comments and share with us what you think. There's another sign, on the opposite side, that pro wrestling is hitting on all cylinders, and it's something that shouldn't cost you any more. Because here's the deal. Billy Corgan's reboot of the National Wrestling Alliance, or NWA, several years ago has now reportedly signed a deal for 2 shows on the CW, one a wrestling show, one a reality show. I can't remember if SmackDown was on CW. I know that they were on the WB. That may have turned into the CW. It was weird back then. But either way, this gives the NWA a much more national footprint when this happens. It will get into a lot more homes, give it a lot more exposure without, for most, adding another dime to their expenses. Post Billy Corgan reboot, we've seen Cody Rhodes as the champion, holding that traditional 10 pounds of gold. We've seen WWE's new SmackDown general manager, Nick Aldis, Matt Cardona, EC3, just to name a few, EC3 being the most current champion right now. Michael, the new NWA isn't something that, I've gone out of my way to be exposed to. As with many without a mainstream deal, it's a lot of work to, even in a more accessible world when it comes to streaming entertainment, it's still hard to get to. How do you feel that this new deal will affect the whole pro wrestling landscape when it goes live on the CW?
I'm going to say it's not going to take a huge market share out of WWE and AEW. However, we are vying for people's eyes. Companies can make money even if people aren't watching. There's still people buying t-shirts. There's still people, paying premium fees to watch pay-per-views at a later date and things like that. but having a more accessible wrestling brand in the NWA, what they could take in market share is tickets, as coming off the last conversation. But also, more than anything else, what we've learned again, we learned for the first time in the Monday Night Wars, and then we're learning it again recently, is that competition brings out the best in everybody.
Agreed.
And so while I'm not going to say that the NWA is direct competition with WWE, they kind of are. Because if you've got a promotion that has a great storyline, that is holding your attention, that is competition. And that is something that when you're fighting for eyeballs in a way are a zero-sum game in terms of making money or not. If you've got eyeballs, the rest will follow. And so the best thing NWA could do is not try and be AEW or WWE, but to just tell great stories. And if they do that, we could see a world where now there's major multiple major wrestling promotions that are fighting for the spotlight. What I can say is that we're living in unprecedented times, because if you throw Impact into that ring as well, no pun intended, that now you're going to have 4 major wrestling brands that all have TV deals simultaneously. Unprecedented times in the best of ways.
I love Impact too, and I wish that it was a little more accessible than the channel Access TV that it's on, because what I use doesn't have it. So to seek out something, it's usually a replay on YouTube. Chime in, let us know what you think about NWA being signed up to the CW, especially if you currently seek out and watch the current NWA product. How do you feel this move to the CW will affect them and pro wrestling fans in general? We're going to wrap up this week's show with 2 things. First, A big congratulations to the new SmackDown General Manager, Nick Aldis. I loved his match with Cody Rhodes at the very first All In. Nick, being British and a heel, made him really easy to hate. You know, he was so pompous and so arrogant and better than everyone else, and was an unspoken success to that show, often very much overlooked when we talk about All In. But also having a GM that looks as though if they wanted to get physical, they absolutely could, really helps the legitimacy of that role. And Adam Pearce, he's been great at that. And I believe Nick Aldis is the perfect on-screen addition. What do you think about Nick Aldis as the addition to SmackDown?
There was just a great presence, man. Like, I enjoyed that. I was caught off guard, but yet enjoyed the way that they did not present him as a wrestler. You know, he came up from the announcers area, and no music, no anything. He introduced himself. There was a definitive charisma that did not necessarily come out of, you know, previous GMs that were not necessarily wrestling talent. They were manager type talent. But Nick Aldis kind of had that swagger that reminds me of Eric Bischoff when he came to WWE Raw, you know, after WCW. There's just a smoothness and a collectedness to his persona. So I'm super excited about it. Absolutely no shade to Adam Pearce whatsoever, because he has done a fantastic job. And so what I hope is that we'll revisit some brand rivalries, and while we get to see a little less Adam Pearce, I think at the same time it's going to equal more Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis going down the road as they get to kind of interact with each other and do stuff. So this was, you know, 2 thumbs straight up for me. Loved what's happening, and really, really great decisions happening on the creative, the booking, and the people placement in WWE right now.
Yeah, and a perfect time to do it just before Survivor Series 2. Plus, I know that you're a sucker for a guy in a suit.
Hello, ladies.
Right?
That's right.
Lastly, I'll leave you with a thought that we're actually just going to circle back to on next week's episode. So I'm going to give you a week to think about this and chime in and let us know. How would you feel if WWE chose to restart the Fiend storyline with Bray's brother, Bo Dallas, under the mask? Now, it was rumored, and I believe that it was confirmed, that it was Bo under the Uncle Howdy mask during Bray's last run. But would you rather see the story just end with Bray, or do you think Bo should pick up the ball and run with it? It's the question that's in our community section on YouTube right now. You can chime in there. We have a post up on Instagram too. You can chime in there as well in the comments. Michael, you know, that should provide some banter until we meet again next week, wouldn't you say?
I would say that's a deep question, and I'm excited to dive into it next week.
Yeah, always good to have you, buddy, and always good to have you guys joining us here on the Wrestle Chat podcast. That'll do it for this week. For Michael Glavin, I'm the Ant-Man, and we'll see you next week here on the Wrestle Chat podcast.